Welcome to my channel. What makes one man rise from poverty to power and stay there for more than 2 decades? Is he a genius strategist, a fearless patriot, or a ruthless ruler? Today, we explore the extraordinary life and legacy of one of the world's most powerful and controversial leaders, Vladimir Putin. Stay with me till the end, because this journey is full of secrets, turning points, and eye-opening facts you may never have heard before. Chapter 1. Humble Beginnings. From the streets of Leningrad. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on October 7, 1952, in the city of Leningrad, now called St. Petersburg. At that time, the city was still recovering from the terrible effects of World War II. Food was limited, life was hard, and many people shared small apartments with other families. Putin's family lived in one of these crowded homes. They did not have a bathroom of their own. They lived in one room in a shared apartment, just like millions of other Soviet families. His father was a factory worker and had fought in World War II. His mother was a gentle woman who worked at home and struggled to keep the family fed. This was the world where little Vladimir grew up. As a child, Putin was often quiet, but he was strong-willed. He didn't like being pushed around. He often got into fights with other boys, not because he wanted to start trouble, but because he wanted to show that he wasn't afraid. One day, he found a book about Soviet spies and read it from beginning to end. From that moment, he wanted to work in intelligence. Unlike most children who dreamed of being astronauts or pilots, young Putin dreamed of being a spy. He liked the idea of secret missions, loyalty to the country, and using the mind more than the muscles. Putin was not the best student in school at first, but when he decided that he wanted to join the KGB, the Soviet Union's main intelligence agency, he understood that he had to improve. He studied hard, especially in languages and law. He also joined a judo club. He loved martial arts and became very skilled. He believed that judo taught him control, discipline, and how to think before acting. This control would later become one of his greatest strengths as a political leader. In the 1970s, after finishing law school, Putin achieved his childhood dream. He joined the KGB. For the next 16 years, he served as an intelligence officer. Most of his work was secret, but we know that he was sent to East Germany during the Cold War. There, he worked in Dresden, gathering information and observing how Western countries operated. But the 1980s were a difficult time for the Soviet Union. The economy was weak, the government was slow, and people began to question if the Soviet system could survive. Then, in 1989, something happened that changed everything. The Berlin Wall fell. East Germany began to collapse, and the Soviet Union lost control. One story from this time shows how much this moment affected Putin. Protesters gathered around the KGB office where Putin worked. He called for help from Soviet forces, but no one came. In that moment, he realized that the Soviet Union was no longer feared. It was powerless. That feeling stayed with him. Years later, Putin said that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century. This one moment would shape his future vision of Russia: strong, respected, and never weak again. After returning to Leningrad in the early 1990s, the world around him had completely changed. The Soviet Union had fallen. Russia was now a young and chaotic country with a new flag, a new government, and a broken economy. People were poor. Crime was rising, and no one seemed to be in control. Many former Soviet officers like Putin didn't know what to do. But Putin had a plan. He found work with the city's mayor, Anatoly Sobchak. Sobchak was one of Putin's old law professors and now one of the most powerful men in St. Petersburg. Putin worked quietly behind the scenes, helping with business deals, foreign connections, and keeping order. He never spoke too much, but people noticed his loyalty, intelligence, and calm nature. It was during this time that Putin began to rise. He was careful not to seek too much attention. He avoided the media. He avoided scandals. He just worked and waited. In a world full of loud voices and chaos, Putin's quiet discipline stood out. He was like a shadow figure, always close to power but never at the center of it. But not for long. By the mid-1990s, powerful people in Moscow had started to notice him. His next stop would be the Kremlin, the center of Russian political power. This was the beginning of a journey that would change Russian history forever. From the cold streets of Leningrad to the secret halls of the KGB, and finally to the sharp edge of post-Soviet politics, Vladimir Putin was no longer just a man with a childhood dream. He was becoming something much bigger. A man ready to take power. Chapter 2. The Rise to Power. A New Face in Russian Politics. In the 1990s, Russia was like a ship lost at sea. The Soviet Union had collapsed, and the country was going through massive changes. Factories were closing, prices were rising, people were losing their jobs. Some became rich overnight, but most became poor. Crime was everywhere. Corruption was normal. And politics was full of confusion. Russia had a new president, Boris Yeltsin, but his government was weak. Many people didn't trust the system anymore. They wanted someone strong to lead the country and fix the mess. That person would soon be Vladimir Putin. After working in St. Petersburg with Mayor Sobchak, Putin was invited to Moscow in 1996. There, he began working quietly in different government roles. He didn't speak much in public, and he avoided the media just like before. But inside the government, people were paying attention. They liked that he worked hard, stayed loyal, and didn't ask for fame. In 1998, President Yeltsin made a bold decision. He chose Putin to lead the FSB, which was the new name for the old KGB. This was a big step. Putin now had real power. He controlled the country's main intelligence agency. This role also gave him access to the secrets of powerful people. But the biggest surprise came just 1 year later. In 1999, Yeltsin suddenly made Putin the Prime Minister of Russia. Most people didn't know who Putin was. He had never run for office. He had never made big speeches. He was just a quiet man from the intelligence world. But Yeltsin saw something in him. Maybe he thought Putin would protect him. Or maybe he believed Putin could control the situation in Russia. Either way, Yeltsin shocked the nation again on December 31st, 1999. On New Year's Eve, he resigned as president and named Vladimir Putin as the acting president of Russia. This moment changed everything. Millions of Russians watched Putin speak on television for the first time as their new leader. He was calm. He was serious. He promised to protect the country and bring order. Many people were not sure what to think. Was this quiet man really strong enough to lead Russia? That answer came quickly. Soon after he took office, Russia faced a major crisis, the Second Chechen War. Chechnya is a small region in southern Russia. In the 1990s, it had tried to break away and become independent. The First War ended badly for Russia. But now, violence was rising again. Bombings had killed civilians in Russian cities. Putin took a hard position. He sent troops to Chechnya and promised to destroy terrorism. His speeches were short but strong. He said he would wipe out terrorists in the toilet, a phrase that shocked some people, but made others feel that Russia finally had a real leader. The war in Chechnya was brutal, and many lives were lost. But Putin's popularity grew fast. Russians liked that he was not afraid to use force. They liked that he spoke with power, and they believed that he would bring stability. In March 2000, just 3 months after becoming acting president, Putin won the official presidential election. He was now the leader of Russia, not by chance, but by the vote of the people. As president, Putin began to build a new image for Russia. He made it clear that the chaos of the 1990s was over. He worked to rebuild the economy, strengthen the army, and increase government control. He also began to change the way power worked in the country. He brought the media under tighter control. TV stations started supporting the government. Political opponents were watched closely. Some were arrested. Others were forced to leave the country. Putin said all of this was necessary to protect Russia. He believed that too much freedom had made the country weak. Now he would bring balance, freedom with control. But behind the scenes, Putin was also building his own power. He placed his loyal friends in top positions. Many of them came from the KGB, just like him. They helped him manage the country, control business, and stay in charge. Some people in the West called this a managed democracy. Elections still happened, but the results were often easy to guess. Opposition voices became weaker, and Putin became stronger. Still, many Russians supported him. Life in the early 2000s was better than the 1990s. Salaries grew. Crime dropped. The country felt more stable. People could travel, shop, and even hope again. Putin gave them a feeling of pride. He spoke about Russian greatness. He defended the country on the world stage. Slowly, people began to trust him more and more. He was not just the president. He was becoming the face of modern Russia. As his first term came to an end, Putin remained popular. In 2004, he won re-election easily. His second term would bring even more control, more change, and more power. The man who had once been a silent worker in the background was now the leader of the largest country in the world. And he had no plans to stop. Chapter 3: Power and Popularity. Putin's Russia in the 2000s. After winning a second term in 2004, Vladimir Putin was more powerful than ever. Many Russians believed he had saved their country from disaster. In the 1990s, people had waited in long lines for food. Crime was out of control. The country was falling apart. But now, things were changing. The economy was growing fast, thanks to rising oil and gas prices. Russia had some of the largest energy resources in the world, and Putin used them well. He made deals with Europe and Asia to sell oil and gas, which brought billions of dollars into the country. This money helped rebuild cities, pay workers, and support the military. People felt safer. Stores were full. Life seemed better. And Putin was getting credit for all of it. But as the economy grew, so did Putin's control. He didn't like criticism. He believed that too much freedom could be dangerous for a country as big and complex as Russia. He once said that Russia needed a strong hand. Slowly, independent media outlets began to disappear. Major TV channels started to support the government. Reporters who spoke against Putin or exposed corruption were often pushed out, or worse. One famous case was the death of journalist Anna Politkovskaya in 2006. She had written about the war in Chechnya and the abuses of Russian soldiers. Her murder shocked the world, and although the killers were caught, many believed that powerful people were behind it. This event became a dark mark on Putin's presidency. Still, his popularity at home remained high. Many Russians didn't trust the West, and they saw Putin as someone who protected Russian interests. He spoke with pride about Russia's history and culture. He often used strong words to remind the world that Russia was still a great power. In 2007, he gave a famous speech in Munich where he criticized the United States for trying to control global politics. He said that the world should not have one master, and that Russia would defend its own path. This was a turning point. It showed that Putin was no longer just rebuilding Russia. He was ready to challenge the West. At the same time, Putin was becoming a kind of celebrity. He often appeared in public doing unusual things, riding horses, flying with birds, diving into the sea, even practicing judo on live TV. These images were not just for fun. They helped build a strong image of Putin as a fearless and active leader. Some people called it a cult of personality, where the leader becomes larger than life. His supporters loved it. They saw him as brave, smart, and in full control. His critics, however, said it was all a show to hide the truth, that democracy in Russia was slowly disappearing. As Putin's second term came to an end in 2008, the Russian constitution said he could not serve 3 terms in a row. Many people wondered what he would do next. Would he step down forever? Would he find a way to stay in power? Once again, Putin surprised the world. Instead of changing the rules, he supported a loyal ally, Dmitry Medvedev, to run for president. Medvedev won the election, and Putin became prime minister. But almost everyone knew who was really in charge. Even though Medvedev had the title, it was clear that Putin was still leading the country from behind the scenes. During this time, some small changes happened. Medvedev talked more about technology, modernization, and even opening up Russian society. But Putin stayed close, watching carefully. He controlled the security forces, the oil industry, and most of the big decisions. In public, he always showed respect to Medvedev. But behind closed doors, he remained the main decision-maker. This period showed how skillfully Putin could use the rules to his advantage. He didn't need to break the law to stay in power. He just needed to play smarter than everyone else. By the end of the 2000s, Russia looked very different from the country Putin had first led in 2000. The economy was stronger. The military was better prepared. Moscow was full of shiny buildings, luxury stores, and expensive cars. But under the surface, power was concentrated in the hands of a few. Most political opponents were either silent, in jail, or living in exile. Many people outside Russia began to call Putin an authoritarian leader. But inside the country, many citizens still believed he was the only person who could lead them forward. One thing was becoming clear. Vladimir Putin was not just a politician. He had become the symbol of the modern Russian state. He had survived economic crises, wars, political scandals, and Western pressure. And now, with the 2012 election approaching, the world waited to see what he would do next. Would he return as president? Would Russians still support him? Or would his long grip on power finally begin to slip? The answer was coming soon, and it would lead to one of the most dramatic chapters in Russia's recent history. Absolutely. Let's now complete the final chapter of your YouTube script on The Life and Legacy of Vladimir Putin. This chapter focuses on his return to power in 2012, the events that reshaped global politics, and the growing controversy around his leadership. As always, the script is written in simple, natural English for beginner learners and in long, connected paragraphs, with plenty of important moments to keep your viewers watching until the very end. Chapter 4: Legacy and Controversy. The Man Who Stayed. In 2012, Vladimir Putin returned to the presidency of Russia. After 4 years of being prime minister, while his close ally Dmitry Medvedev held the title of president, Putin announced that he would run for the highest office again. This time, the rules were different. The presidential term had been extended from 4 years to 6. If he won, Putin could stay in power even longer. Some people in Russia protested. Thousands of people gathered in the streets of Moscow. They shouted slogans like "Russia without Putin" and demanded fair elections. But the government responded with arrests, police action, and strict control. And once again, Putin won the election by a large margin. His third term as president marked a new chapter in Russian politics. Putin was more confident, more powerful, and more determined than ever before. But his country and the world was also changing. Social media was rising. Young people were asking more questions. Western countries were watching him closely. And Putin had new goals. He wanted to rebuild Russia's image as a strong, independent, and respected global power. And to do that, he made a move that would shock the world. In 2014, Russian forces entered the Crimean Peninsula, which was part of Ukraine. Within weeks, Russia had taken control of Crimea. Putin said that the people of Crimea wanted to join Russia. He said that Russia had to protect its citizens and Russian-speaking people in the region. A vote was held, and Russia officially took Crimea as its own. But many countries said the vote was illegal. They said it was a clear case of invasion. The West responded with sanctions, economic punishments meant to hurt Russia's economy. But inside Russia, Putin's popularity soared. Many people believed he had brought back lost Russian land. They saw him as a strong leader who was not afraid of the West. This moment was a turning point. It created a deep divide between Russia and Western countries like the United States and those in Europe. It also showed how far Putin was willing to go to defend what he believed was Russia's rightful place in the world. After Crimea, Russia became more active in global conflicts. In 2015, Putin sent Russian military forces to Syria to support the government of Bashar al-Assad. This move changed the war in Syria and increased Russia's influence in the Middle East. Again, Putin showed that Russia was no longer a silent player. It was now a power to be respected or feared. At the same time, many Western governments began accusing Russia of interfering in their political systems. In 2016, during the U.S. presidential election, American officials said that Russian hackers had tried to influence the results. They accused Russia of spreading fake news, using social media to divide voters, and even stealing private information. Putin denied these claims, but the tension grew stronger. Russia was now seen as a digital superpower, not just fighting wars with soldiers, but also with information, cyber attacks, and online influence. Back in Russia, Putin continued to tighten his control. Opposition leaders found it harder and harder to organize. One of the most famous critics, Alexei Navalny, was jailed many times. In 2020, Navalny was poisoned with a deadly chemical. He survived, but he blamed Putin directly. The government denied involvement, but the message was clear. Criticism of the system was dangerous. And yet, even after all this, Putin made another bold move. In 2020, he changed the Russian constitution. The new rules allowed him to run for 2 more 6-year terms. If he chooses, he could now remain in power until the year 2036. By then, he would be in his 80s and would have ruled Russia longer than any leader since Joseph Stalin. Then came 2022, a year that shocked the world again. In February, Putin announced a special military operation in Ukraine. But it wasn't just a small mission. Russian troops began a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Cities were bombed. Millions of people became refugees. Ukraine fought back with strong resistance. Western countries united to support Ukraine with weapons, money, and humanitarian aid. Sanctions against Russia became stronger than ever before. Many businesses left the country. The Russian economy was hit hard. But still, Putin continued the war, saying it was necessary to protect Russia's future and fight Western influence near its borders. This war changed everything. Putin's image around the world became more negative. Leaders called him aggressive, dangerous, and even a war criminal. But inside Russia, many people still supported him. They believed the government's story, that Russia was defending itself from NATO and Western threats. The truth was becoming harder to see, and the world had clearly split into different sides. Today, Vladimir Putin remains in power. He is one of the most watched and discussed leaders in the world. Some call him a protector of Russian pride. Others call him a dictator who controls his people with fear. His legacy is complex. He brought stability to a broken country. He made Russia richer, stronger, and more powerful. But he also reduced freedom, punished his critics, and created deep divisions at home and abroad. What will history say about Vladimir Putin? That answer is not clear yet. He is still writing his story. He is still shaping Russia's future and challenging the world. But one thing is certain. Few leaders have had such a strong and lasting impact in the 21st century. Love him or hate him, Vladimir Putin is a name that will be remembered for a very long time. So, what do you think? Is Vladimir Putin a hero defending his homeland, or a strongman changing the rules to stay in power? His life is full of mystery, strategy, and bold decisions. And his story isn't over yet. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.